Let's see what Aiden Magee irons. Morning.
Morning, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right.
There are some big sports stories around him. The first thing we're going to ask you is whether you iron your bed sheets.
Yeah, well, it's an important question on this. Let's deal with it first. The bed sheets definitely ironed, because I sometimes find that they can be a little bit damp even after a tumble dry. I think the iron just gets rid of that last bit of moisture, doesn't it? I pay someone to do it, I must admit, but I still have, but it's still done nonetheless.
That is the answer.
And then what was that on socks? I agree with you. Fresh out of the packet, you might iron them, but after that, no. Just stick them all together. It's just pairing them off. That's the only problem, isn't it? You lose them after a few weeks.
Yeah.
On to sport, shall we?
On to sport. Boris Becker.
Well, this transcends sport.
He was ironing £20 notes.
Oh, okay, well, 50s probably.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a fall from grace that's in the making for 20 years. He was told that he hadn't heeded the warnings yesterday by Judge Deborah Taylor. Don't forget, he was declared bankrupt in Germany in 2002, 20 years ago. And the full scale of his excesses is coming to the fore now. He once owed £54 million for a start. He's cleared some of that. But when you consider some of the excesses in his life, I mean, he had 2 divorces for a start, going back to the 90s. The first one was in the late 90s. He finished playing in 1999. His wealth dropped substantially. I see this a lot with sporting personalities. You know, they struggle. They know when the income's going to drop, but they can't adapt their lifestyle accordingly. When their tap turns off, they're still getting helicopters to go and tear to Harrods.
You can sort of understand it when you've been a millionaire from the age of 17.
Oh, without doubt. That's a really good point.
So he's never been an adult that's had to count his money.
He earned his first £1 million in 1985 at the age of 17. There was no evidence back then that he was mismanaging his money. He's admitted since then that he's been a bit less than frugal with his wealth. But you think how much £1 million was in 1985? I mean, that would buy you most property in most parts of London at that point. It wouldn't get you a shoebox these days in many places. However, but he will serve half of the jail term on licence. I could see him working again. I don't think this crime would necessarily preclude him from working in future. I think it's certainly not on the same level as some other crimes that would end that argument indefinitely.
Interesting, because, I mean, I've always liked him when he's on the BBC, for instance, commenting on Wimbledon, particularly. Yeah. He's got a lovely sense of humour, and he is acknowledged as a champ, obviously.
Yeah. Did you interview him back in the day, Anne?
Yes, I've interviewed him several times, and he's always been on good form and is very, very
he's
funny.
A personality, isn't he?
But the BBC, for instance, I think will have to worry about whether they ever...
I think they'll have a decision to make, I do, but I just think people like him, and I think it's a crime that it's reckless. And as far as we know, no one's lost out yet. They will probably see their money somewhere further down the line.
Well, doubt it.
Yeah, mate, look, with the sums involved, maybe not, but he claims to have paid some of it back. But we see that, as I say, we see this quite a lot. I mean, look at this, £22,000 a month he was paying for his rent in Wimbledon. He had school fees to pay, going back decades. I know.
Bankrupt.
No, I mean, lots of people go through that sort of thing.
And there were, as I say, there were two. The first divorce was back in 1995, so this has been.
It's not very credible excuses, though. Is it?
No. Well, even if
he wrote a book, if he wrote an autobiography, Life in Prison, why I got there, all the rest of it, that would sell.
Yeah, it probably would. Yeah, but there was £1 million. So he didn't declare all his assets. You're meant to do that. Yeah. When you declared as bankrupt. I mean, it was a £3 million estate in Marbella. There was a £1 million home in Germany.
He deliberately kept
He concealed it, yeah, exactly. And there will have been... Who knows who his creditors were? They could have been people who were really desperate for the money. We assume that because of the sums involved, they're all rich people and they're banks, but not necessarily. I see it in football a lot, where you have administration and you have clubs trying to get out of it, and some of the creditors are people like St John's Ambulance. Yeah. And you don't really... And others as well, individuals or people who run corner shops or whatever. Yeah. You know, people who rely on that, who were promised that money and didn't get it.
Talking of football, what's going on? Who's going to buy Chelsea?
Well, the waters have been muddied significantly as of yesterday. The Ineos chairman from left field has made a £4.5 billion offer for the club, and this was after just hours earlier it was assumed that the other bid by Todd Burley was the preferred one. So he's the owner of LA Dodgers. His bid is believed to be worth around £2.7 billion, and then suddenly Jim Ratcliffe comes in at the 11th hour with 4.25 billion. Now the issue here is that 2 or 3 other bids got stood down yesterday and told they're unsuccessful, but then Ratcliffe's come in yesterday. What, 3 weeks a month after the deadline. So the deadline was...
Making a bid of, what, 4.25 million?
No, billion.
Billion.
Yeah, billion. So he's pledged...
He is British.
He is. So this is his thing. He's saying he probably has come in See, if he was to buy the club, the diligence isn't an issue because he did it 3 years ago because he was going to buy Chelsea then.
Yeah.
Nadine Dorries very chillingly, I don't know if you noticed this week, said Chelsea are on borrowed time. They've got to get this done within a few weeks. Now, this is a problem here.
So he's also
coming late.
approved.
I would say that's a good way of putting it because he doesn't need 3 or 4 weeks to inspect the book because he's done it. The books haven't changed dramatically since 2019 because we've had COVID since then. And so he's also pledged to deliver on a new stadium. The new stadium is a huge, huge thing for Chelsea, £1 billion that will cost.
Who would the fans prefer?
I think the fans now would probably prefer Jim Ratcliffe because he has pledged to put in £1.75 billion over 10 years on players alone. The rest of it would go to victims of war. So we'll see where it goes. But, yeah, it's got to be done quickly because the government are getting fed up with this. And Abramovich said in the week that he would like an extra £500 million to go to charity to prove that, to kind of smooth off...
Saying the right things, isn't he?
He's saying the right things, yeah. And don't forget, he's not seeing any of this money. He's letting this club go. He's made a few quid out of it down the years as well. Let's not forget, he's had it for 20 years and it's done a lot for his reputation. So yeah, we'll see where it goes. But I think you'll see some movement on that in the next week or so. But the interesting thing about Jim Ratcliffe is that he's a massive Manchester United fan, and so he was involved in Team Sky. He said he was never going to buy a Premier League club, and then so he bought a First Division club in France. He bought Team Sky from Team Sky. So he's been running that.
Has that been done before, where you get somebody who's the owner of one club but a massive fan of another?
Yeah, I mean, I know a story from when I was younger. The guy who bought my local club, Gillingham, was a massive fan of their rivals, Millwall. I used to go to Millwall games with him. He kept it quiet, though.
I suppose it's just business.
Apart from when I was on GBNews.
It's all about the money. Lovely. Thank you, Aiden. We'll catch up with you later on.
What money? I mean, huge amounts of money.
Oh, it's a lot of money.